in the aftermath of those deadly tornadoes in southwest Missouri.
Okay. It's like we're gonna do it.
Those were the sounds of terror from inside a Joplin gas station as the tornado hit. At least 90 people are now confirmed dead in Joplin, and that number sadly is expected to rise. And this, in fact, is new video just coming into us. It's shocking and disturbing images, to say the least. 2,000 buildings now lay in ruin, entire neighborhoods gone. And as residents try to process the devastation, the goal right now is finding survivors. Despite losing everything they own, many are still giving thanks right now.
Your heart just breaks for all these people that lost so much.
Yeah.
At least we have each other.
That's all that matters.
Yeah.
And we have video of rescue crews actually going to door right now. They're looking for survivors at this hour, and they've been hampered by thunderstorms and more severe weather rolling through the area today. And one of the major hospitals in Joplin took a direct hit from the tornado, and we're learning just in the last few minutes 4 people were killed at St. John's Regional Medical Center. A worker there says he was pulled out of a window by the force of the twister and held on for dear life. NBC's Al Roker is near the hospital. He joins us live from Joplin. Al, you've been there all morning long, and I'm sure you've heard incredible stories, and the devastation behind you, again, says so much about what hit that town.
Well, Tamron, I'll tell you, we spoke with one of the nurses on the 6th floor of St. John's Hospital. She said the sirens went off. They were told they had 20 minutes. In reality, they only had 5. And I think the other thing that is just so stark, you look at the parking lot here at St. John's. There are almost no cars in the parking lot. They've been thrown. And I was talking with Mike Bettis of the Weather Channel. Neither he nor I have seen damage to vehicles like this. We've seen cars tossed here and there, but these are cars that have almost bent and mangled beyond recognition, or the sheet metal has been, it looks like somebody took a ball-peen hammer and just wailed away at it. It was taken up obviously high enough into the funnel where it was beaten up by hail and then dropped down. Trees completely stripped of bark. As you said, at least 90 people have died. This is the deadliest tornado in almost 60 years, the deadliest tornado in Missouri history. And this really, Tamron, tells the tale. This is a neighborhood, and it scenes like these repeated time and time and time again, block after block after block. At least 2 miles that way, another 3 miles to the south. People are now just coming back to their homes, trying to salvage something. In fact, Tony, I don't know if you can see, there's a guy pulling out an ATV out of his yard, trying to salvage whatever they can. I spoke with a guy who's been they've been trying to find their next door neighbor, 73-year-old gentleman he said he saw pull in about a half hour before the tornado struck. They haven't been able to find him. They haven't been able to see him. It is just utter devastation. And as you mentioned, adding insult to injury, we're in a strong risk area right now for strong storms. We could see another tornado. We've had massive lightning displays. We've had half-inch diameter hail. It's been incredible here, really hampering the efforts of the fire and rescue crews, the search and rescue teams. Yeah. So it's one of these things where I've covered a few of these. I've never, ever seen anything quite like this.
Al Roker live for us in the heart of Joplin. Thank you very much, Al, for that very detailed report from there. And as many as 48 tornadoes touched down across the nation's midsection. 1 person died and 29 were injured from a twister in Minneapolis. 100 homes were damaged, and police report that businesses, some of them overnight, saw looting. And further south in Kansas, a tornado blasted its way through a small town near Topeka. Redding has a population of just 250. The twister damaged 200 homes in and around that town. And as we've said, more severe weather. You heard Al mention it. It is expected in different parts of the country in the midsection. NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns joins us now. So, Bill, first let's talk about what we're seeing, and then I want your perspective again on that storm that hit in Joplin.
Sure. That's the one thing I want to give people perspective. I mean, we've seen the pictures and the devastation. It's kind of hard to put that jigsaw puzzle together. So let me just show you that first. This is a picture before of downtown Joplin before the storm went through. From going over the first-hand accounts, roughly drew what the tornado path was through the town. The St. John's Hospital to the left of your screen is where Al Roker was just located. From there, it went across the middle of the downtown Joplin area, the south side of town, at least a half-mile wide, and then it went up through the retail section where a lot of the big box stores were, and there's a lot of amazing harrowing stories out of there too, and then it exited town. Now, right in the middle of all this was the Joplin High School that was completely devastated. The superintendent just said he has no idea in 3 months from now when students return where he's going to put all of these students, because that high school is useless right now, and that's the biggest one in the city. Now, as far as where we stand with these 90 fatalities, this one single tornado is now the 20th most deadly all time, going back to the late 1800s, and of course that number is going to rise. Hopefully it won't get anything close to the 181 in the Woodward, and of course the tri-state tornado, that was the famous one that killed 695. So it has happened before in our history, but not since 1953. We thought our technology was a little better than this. It just goes to show you, when they're this big and this strong, it doesn't make a difference. You have to be in a storm shelter to survive. Currently in Joplin, we're doing okay. There's going to be thunderstorms this afternoon. We're under a moderate risk of severe weather. That's the area in red. It goes from Oklahoma City to Tulsa, all the way back up into the Joplin area. That's who needs to watch out for possibly more strong storms late today. I don't think we're going to get too many big tornadoes today, but then tomorrow, believe it or not, 3 days in a row, in the same location, I'm expecting a tornado outbreak. This will include the Tulsa area from Wichita into areas of hard-hit Missouri. So we got 3 days in a row of this, Tamron. I mean,
unbelievable.
This is historical.
It is unbelievable.
No one else says he hasn't seen anything like it. You literally had to have been around in 1953 for the Worcester, Mass tornado to witness anything like this, and not many of us were here then.
And to think that, as you pointed out, another day we're waiting for, and looking at your map, more tornadoes in that region.
2 in a row. We're just, we just have our concern and my concern is that there's still people that haven't been rescued. Right. They're sitting there trapped, waiting, and then you got heavy rain and hail, and the worse the weather is, the longer it will take to save lives.
Was Jeff Piotrowski, who traveled up to 60 miles an hour to keep up with that twister. Jeff is on the phone with me now. Jeff, thank you for joining us. I'm happy you're safe. But we could hear in your voice the tension. What were you thinking while still chasing that tornado?
Well, you know, what was so scary about yesterday afternoon in Joplin was the intensity of the tornado. Once it developed, within seconds of it developing, rapidly grew to a quarter mile, then half a mile wide, and then within about another minute, it was approaching 3/4 of a mile wide, and it had tremendous velocity as far as the winds and debris and the amount of destruction. And I could tell the forward speed of the tornado was probably close to 50 miles an hour. When you get a 3/4 mile wide tornado, as powerful that was yesterday afternoon in Joplin, it's going to do a lot of damage, and I knew some really bad stuff was going to be unfolding as it went across the city, and that's what I witnessed.
Jeff, how do you gauge when you're too close? Again, you're talking about I heard you say that you were scared or that what you were worried about. How do you measure when you're too close?
The way you measure when you're too close is that it's all perspective. You're out wide out in cold country, and there's nothing around from debris. It's not too bad, 100 yards or so. But if you're in a city like yesterday in Joplin, the tornado grew so fast, so wide, so fast that I ended up being much closer to the tornado than I ever anticipated being, and we actually suffered some damage, and actually got a little cuts and scrapes as the tornado blew out my window on the north side from flying debris just west of the Joplin High School. And at that point, we had to abort the chase, and I went into search and rescue mode because we found a number of people that were right in front of us with the homes totally leveled just west of the high school there. I went up there, and for about the next 2 hours, 2.5 hours, they went from house to house, and basically there were hundreds of people crying for help, and the whole area was just flattened. So basically just went from house to house, and a lot of that area had a lot of elderly people in it, the homes, and found a number of victims as well as people survivors, and literally just spent the next 2.5, 3 hours just digging people out of the rubble, waiting for the ambulances and triage to get there to help me. It was just a horrific scene there.
Unimaginable. And Jeff, I know you're in Oklahoma chasing a storm now. We just heard Bill Caron say we could see another day of this potentially violent weather. So stay safe with your team, and thank you for telling us what you saw and what you were able to explain that you caught on video. Thank you, Jeff.
This is a Playhouse Theater There were actually people inside this building at the time. They had a play going on. Unfortunately, they did recover a few bodies inside this building. You can see the theater chairs there, and actually even a vehicle that was thrown on top of the building back there. Down to the side here, these vehicles were thrown up against the side of the playhouse here, and they're just smashed. Where did they come from? They actually came from the parking lot of the hospital here. The hospital is back here to the right. As you look off to the west, it's suffered significant damage, and then the parking lot is then down behind us there, and it's basically been scraped clean. All the vehicles that were in the parking lot have been tossed towards us here, and every single one of them is a total loss. An intense tornado that hit here in Joplin, Missouri. A state declaration for disaster has been made by Governor Nixon. He will visit this area today, and search and rescue have been mobilized, as well as the National Guard. That is the latest from Joplin, Missouri. I'm meteorologist Mike Bettis. Tamron, back to you.
All right, Mike. And joining me now on the phone is Professor Howard Bluestein of the University of Oklahoma. Professor, thank you for joining me.
Good afternoon.
You have so many people who are asking the question, why are we seeing so many so-called historic tornadoes? We've already seen tornado deaths in Mississippi, Alabama, North Carolina, Georgia, Louisiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri. What do you believe is happening here?
Well, I think this is really just natural variability. Every so many years, the conditions for large tornadoes over widespread areas happens. It's been rather unusual to have a number of outbreaks back to back in 1 year.
What are the conditions that make for, if you will, the perfect storms here? Again, Alabama, 300 people died, and I remember hearing the reports of folks saying this tornado stretched for miles. They've not seen anything like it. And then this morning, the same kind of storyline, but in Missouri, people had not seen a storm of that size hit there since 1953, I believe.
Right. Well, right now the jet stream is unusually persistent and strong across the plains and the Midwest. There's plenty of moisture coming up from the Gulf of Mexico, and these are ingredients which spawn supercell thunderstorms, which can then go on and produce tornadoes. It's very unusual for these storms to go through a heavily populated area like Joplin, and it's a real tragedy that the tornado just didn't go right outside and skirt the city.
If it's unusual to see these tornadoes in heavily populated areas, why are we seeing it now? I should mention over the weekend there was a death in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Right. Well, part of it is that the population has grown and cities and suburbs have expanded. So there's a higher probability that people will actually get struck. Also, it could be just random chance.
What about climate change? You have many people who see these severe storms, and not just the tornadoes, but the strength of hurricanes and even the severe storms. We're getting hail and high winds right now from Texas, I believe, all the way through the Midwest. Is this a result of climate change or an effect of climate change?
Well, I can't speak for hurricanes, but for tornadoes and supercells, I don't think we can prove whether or not the occurrences of all these bad events this year are due to global warming whatsoever. They could be simply due to natural variability. After all, when you think back to some of the other historic events like April 3rd, April 4th, 1974, the tornadoes in Missouri in 1953, the tri-state tornadoes back in 1925, if you look through the records, you'll see that every 20, 30, 40 years, there are these tremendous widespread outbreaks, and some of them have occurred long before we were talking about global warming.
All right, Dr. Howard Bluestein of the University of Oklahoma, where they certainly see their share of tornadoes developing in that state. Now, an erupting volcano in Iceland is disrupting air travel in Europe and forcing President Obama to change his travel plans. We learned just a short time ago the president will leave Dublin, Ireland tonight instead of tomorrow to fly to London because of the ash cloud. So far, more than 36 flights have been canceled to and from Scotland, but it is expected to get worse. Last year, you might recall, the eruption of a different volcano in Iceland caused 6 days of massive flight cancellations around the world. And the eruption has also turned day into night in Iceland, and a coating of ash covers a widespread area. The volcano began erupting Saturday.